Welcome to a deep dive, where we're pulling together, well, quite a complex and often turbulent stack of information today. We're not just scanning the headlines, we're really trying to sift through some urgent weather warnings, navigate these high-stakes security operations, and also track major geopolitical declarations. And all of this really materialized just within the last 24 hours.
It's quite a convergence, isn't it? A really unusual confluence of crises.
Yeah.
If we try to synthesize all this material, you basically see three core themes emerging.
Okay.
First, there's the immediate, sustained environmental threat impacting lives and infrastructure right now.
Yeah.
Then you've got these critical local security updates, some involving specific incidents, others dealing with really troubling allegations around detentions and the penal system.
Right.
And finally, these enormous geopolitical shifts happening, things centered on peace efforts, political dissent like the Nobel Prize, and that huge announcement about Gaza.
So our mission today is to quickly extract the most vital insights from all these different sources, really help you connect these, well, often disparate local and global threads.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to go beyond just the summary and try to understand the implications of what we're seeing unfold. So let's dive right in. Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. Welcome to the News El Salvador SV podcast, in this space for conversation and reflection where we explore together current topics from El Salvador and the world. Find this podcast on your favorite platform. Your gifts or donations can be made via PayPal. The link can be found in the description of this podcast's content. Or through your Bitcoin Satoshis, your contributions make a difference to continue on the platforms that host this podcast. Your donations will be greatly appreciated. Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with, I think, the most immediate and pervasive concern, the weather. The reports indicate we've definitely moved past just a cautionary status. We're in a full-blown, sustained crisis mode now, aren't we?
That is absolutely the essential takeaway. Protection Civil has officially declared a nationwide orange alert, the Alerta Naranja. And this is a really critical administrative step. It signifies that authorities believe the danger is real, it's sustained, and it's widespread. It demands immediate, coordinated action across every single department.
And Medio Ambiente is confirming the forecasts. How long are you looking at?
They're saying these intense rain patterns will last all week.
All week, wow.
This isn't just a 48-hour storm event. We're talking about a period of persistent, elevated risk for days.
And the government's response seems to reflect that severity, that sustained threat. The Ministry of Education immediately suspended classes for all public schools nationwide.
That's right. And think about the logistics of that. It's a massive operation basically designed to safeguard students and staff from the risks, flash flooding, dangerous road travel, potentially compromised school buildings.
It's a huge decision, acknowledges the vulnerability, especially when people are trying to get to and from school.
Exactly. Now, colleges and private universities, they were given the option to follow suit, based on their own specific risk assessment in their areas.
Yeah.
But essentially, the national public education system is on pause. And it's important, I think, to understand what's driving this sustained danger.
Right, what's causing it.
The Environmental Watch specifically highlights this low-pressure system that's just sort of sitting off the coast of Guatemala.
Oh, okay.
And that system acts like a constant engine, basically just pulling moisture and instability into our region. It pretty much guarantees further significant impact over the coming days, which just reinforces why this orange alert is so serious.
And sadly, the human toll of this weather event is already becoming clear, confirming why this alert level is absolutely necessary. We're seeing several incidents that really highlight the chaotic conditions these rains create.
We really have to look at the specific devastating consequences that are already happening. In Conchagua, for instance, there was a particularly tragic and almost surreal accident.
What happened there?
An adult and a minor died after their motorcycle struck a cow.
A cow on the road.
On a rain-slicked road, yeah. And you see, this isn't just a simple traffic collision. It's an illustration of how visibility plummets, road conditions deteriorate, and even things like displaced livestock suddenly become these unique, deadly hazards during severe storms.
That's awful. And we're also seeing the sheer power of the water currents, aren't we?
Absolutely. In La Paz, there was a very dangerous rescue operation that unfolded. Occupants in their truck were actually swept away by the rapidly rising current of the Rio Cuboa.
Wow. Were they okay?
Thankfully, yes. Reports say rescue agents and the PNC were able to intervene and save the occupants. But the incident just demonstrates how quickly, even what seems like a modest river crossing, can become a lethal trap in these conditions.
It happens so fast.
It does. And sadly, not all these stories have that outcome. In San Vicente, Well, the rains claimed the lives of Nancy Tatiana and her young son, Kennedy Roque. They were reportedly dragged away by a ferocious current.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. And these incidents, they really underscore the fragility of our existing drainage systems, our river management, when faced with this kind of intense, sustained rainfall. You know, when we analyze this orange alert, we have to recognize it implies that certain infrastructure, culverts, bridges, riverbanks, they are almost guaranteed to fail under this immense pressure.
Given that really catastrophic picture locally, how does the impact we're seeing here fit into the wider regional context? Because this isn't just happening in El Salvador, is it?
No, not at all. It is entirely regional, and that is the crucial context for you, the listener, to understand. Our sources are confirming that in Mexico, the toll is actually far greater.
Really? How bad is it there?
At least 64 people have died due to these intense rains. And there are still dozens missing across key states like Veracruz, Puebla, and Hidalgo.
64 dead. That's a massive disaster. That speaks to something beyond localized flooding.
It really does. It speaks to infrastructural failure on a massive scale.
Yeah.
You look at Costa Rica, for example. They experienced huge disruptive flooding following the desbordamiento, the overflow of the Rio Cazones.
Right.
And that kind of flooding, it just paralyzes commerce, destroys homes, and it carries immense disease risk afterwards, too.
And Honduras as well?
Yes, our neighbor Honduras also declared an emergency in 4 of its departments because of this ongoing rainfall.
So the key insight here is?
The insight is that every country in this region is dealing with basically the same atmospheric phenomenon.
Yeah.
This isn't just a local problem. It's a major multi-country weather crisis. It demands regional coordination, standardized alerts like the Alert in Naranja, and crucially, the significant investment in climate-resilient infrastructure that goes way beyond just handling typical seasonal rains. Our orange alert is really a symptom of a much broader regional climate emergency unfolding right now.
That terrifying weather portrait brings us, unfortunately, to another complex area, the intersection of security and justice. This is a topic demanding equally careful scrutiny today. We're seeing the simultaneous movement of these different legal sagas, from highly visible public disorder arrests to very sensitive and critical detention controversies. It feels like it reveals a multi-pronged approach to public order.
Yeah, it's quite a mix. Let's start with an incident that, well, it was captured entirely on video, went instantly viral. The incident on Boulevard Los Heros.
Ah, yes, I saw that.
Right. This wasn't some complex crime, but it drew immediate, intense public attention and a swift response. It led to the capture of Jeffrey Eden Nelson Chicas Diaz and Jose Candido Chicas Diaz.
And the documentation of this incident is fascinating because it really highlights how quickly things can escalate, right? The source material specifies the entire conflict began over a minor traffic infringement.
Exactly. The driver of the vehicle made an improper cross.
Okay.
The motorcyclist then responded by blocking the path. And from that initial disagreement, it instantly deteriorated into physical aggression right there in public.
And now they're facing charges for public disorder.
Correct. And the very aggressive, highly public nature of the response from authorities sends a pretty clear message that even what might seem like minor acts of public disruption can lead to high-profile arrests and consequences.
Meanwhile, parallel to this public spectacle, the core security operations against organized crime are continuing.
That's right. The Fiscalía General de la República, the FGR, reported the capture of Carlos Humberto Ventura Martinez and Glenda Marina Ventura Moreno.
And the charges.
They face charges for alleged commerce and distribution of drugs. So if you dive into this, it suggests the FGR's focus remains quite broad. They're targeting both that high-visibility public disorder we just talked about and the underlying supply chains of illicit substances. It indicates that the operation they allegedly ran was substantial enough to warrant a coordinated FGR response and a public announcement about the arrests.
Okay, now let's turn to these high-profile detention sagas, which definitely carry immense political weight. The case of Catalino Miranda, the bus sector entrepreneur, it just continues to unfold, doesn't it?
It does. The material we have confirms he has now spent 12,272 days in prison.
1,272 days.
Yes, for 5 distinct crimes. That's, well over 3.5 years behind bars.
And his case isn't just a legal proceeding, is it? It feels emblematic of something larger.
I think that's right. It's become emblematic of the state's approach to, shall we say, economic dissent. This whole long-running saga kicked off back in 2022 after Miranda unilaterally increased bus fares.
Right, a direct challenge to the executive's control over public service pricing.
Precisely. And President Bukelle's strong warning back then, remember, about not playing with fire. That really set the political tone. So the sheer duration of this detention, 1,272 days, it sends a powerful, unmistakable signal. Challenging executive authority on core economic issues like bus fares will result in sustained and serious legal consequences, regardless of your previous standing or influence.
Now, on a slightly different note concerning high-profile detentions, there was actually a positive development for the founders of revolves. They recovered their freedom recently.
Yes, they did. However, and this is important, that freedom remains conditional.
Okay. What does that mean exactly?
It means that while they are out of custody, they are scheduled for a mandatory hearing this very Tuesday, October 14th. So this conditional status means their situation is still quite tenuous, still subject to legal maneuvering and decisions.
So recovering their freedom is significant, obviously, but the underlying charges and the future of their organization, that all remains unresolved.
Exactly. The pressure is definitely still on. Remember, if you want to help us, to pay for the platforms where this content is hosted and the materials for this podcast, or we invite you for a coffee, you can do so via PayPal. The link can be found in the description of this podcast's content, or through the Bitcoin QR code, which you will find on the cover of this content. Scan it with any cryptocurrency wallet and send whatever you think is appropriate, which will be a great help.
We return now to what is perhaps the most sensitive area of this whole security update: the alarming claims regarding accountability and the penal system. These are allegations of, well, profound concern, dealing directly with the fate of deportees and detainees.
This really raises a critical question about institutional transparency, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have families urgently raising the alarm about 6 Salvadorans. These individuals were deported from the U.S., and now their families claim they are essentially missing within the local prison system.
And missing, meaning the families can't get any information.
That's what they claim. They say they are completely unable to get definitive information from authorities about their whereabouts, their status, anything. It's creating, as you can imagine, immense anguish and uncertainty for these families.
And the detail provided for one specific case really brings the humanitarian side of this crisis into sharp focus. There's a specific mention of Irvin, right? A 24-year-old deported back in March.
Yes, and his family's story is quite extraordinary. They were so desperate to locate him, they actually returned to El Salvador from the U.S. after living there for 9 years.
They gave up their life in the U.S.
They did. Abandoned their life abroad just to come back and try to find information about their missing relative.
Wow. That decision to uproot your entire life after 9 years in the U.S. simply to search for a missing family member who seems trapped in this bureaucratic void. It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It speaks volumes about the perceived lack of available information and perhaps the deep distrust these families feel towards the existing institutional channels. The implication here is really stark. Deportation, which is intended as a return home, has instead, for some, seemingly devolved into a situation of severe insecurity and profound uncertainty. This challenge of accountability really demands sustained attention, both internationally and locally.
And these distressing reports extend beyond deportees, tragically, to the deaths of educators who were captured under the security regime. The family of Professor Manuel Mira is claiming he suffered mistreatment while he was in the penal system.
Yes, and this is an extremely serious and apparently recurring pattern that needs highlighting. Professor Mira tragically died only 22 days after he was released from custody.
22 days.
And crucially, the material points out that this is the second death of a teacher captured under the current security regime in just the last 2 months.
The second teacher in 2 months.
When you connect that pattern, these claims of mistreatment followed by death shortly after release, it inevitably raises profound questions. Questions about the conditions inside the penal system, about the treatment of detainees, and about the absolute necessity for immediate, independent investigations to ensure human rights standards are being met, especially for vulnerable groups like educators.
Okay, shifting slightly now to broader domestic legal and administrative changes. We have a couple of significant data points here that seem to reflect shifting government priorities, maybe.
I think that's a fair assessment. The first one concerns civil society. Gobernación, the Ministry of Interior, reported a notable decrease. They granted 37% fewer legal statuses, or personerias jurídicas, over the last year compared to the previous period.
Okay, remind us what exactly is a personeria jurídica.
Right, so for the listener, a personeria jurídica is basically what allows an organization, whether it's a nonprofit, an NGO, a community group, a foundation, to operate legally. It lets them receive funding, sign contracts, establish legal standing. It's fundamental to formal operation.
So a 37% decrease. What might that suggest about the current bureaucratic climate for these kinds of groups?
Well, it suggests a significant tightening of the administrative gateway for forming new organizations. This could signal several things, really. It might mean greater scrutiny of civil society groups, maybe a bottleneck in processing because of new governmental structures or priorities, or perhaps even a deliberate policy shift toward favoring certain types of organizations over others. Whatever the reason, the statistic implies less space is being created, administratively at least, for new organized non-governmental bodies.
Interesting. And meanwhile, on the fiscal side?
On the fiscal side, the Commission approved a dictamen, which is essentially a ruling for a fiscal amnesty. This specifically covers interest payments and surcharges on unpaid taxes.
So that's aimed at encouraging compliance.
Exactly. It's a targeted financial relief measure designed to encourage people and businesses with outstanding tax obligations to come forward and settle up by waiving some of the penalties.
And finally, in this section, considering the country's unique embrace of digital currency, these new regulations coming for digital assets seem pretty critical.
They absolutely are. A new law is apparently set to expand controls over providers of digital assets and specifically Bitcoin usage within the country.
What kind of controls are we likely talking about?
Well, to really deep dive into the practical impact, we should probably expect this law to introduce stricter licensing requirements for crypto providers. Also, enhanced Know Your Customer KYC and anti-money laundering AML processes are almost certain to be part of it.
So a move towards a more regulated environment for crypto.
Definitely. It represents an increased regulatory oversight around crypto. It seems designed to balance the innovative appeal of Bitcoin adoption, which the government has championed, with the state's need for financial control, tax oversight, and mitigating risks like money laundering. Okay, now shifting to the global stage. What's truly fascinating here is just the sheer velocity of these major global events unfolding. You've got this intersection of major conflict, high-level diplomacy, and really significant political symbolism all happening concurrently. And often, these things seem to be in direct opposition to one another. It's quite something.
It really is. And the Nobel Peace Prize announcement certainly injected immediate controversy into global politics. Let's start with a nomination that definitely raised some eyebrows. Former U.S. President Donald Trump was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by the presidency of Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yeah, that nomination, regardless of the final outcome, it serves a geopolitical purpose in itself, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, it sort of balances the political scale symbolically. It suggests potential foreign policy achievements, likely linked back to things like the Abraham Accords or other diplomatic actions pursued during his presidency. You also have to remember that nominations often reflect the internal political dynamics within the nominating country itself. And this one clearly places a symbolic stake in the ground regarding perhaps perceptions of global influence or alignment.
Interesting point. But the actual winner, María Corina Machado, well, that created the real diplomatic firestorm, didn't it? She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And the material highlights that this is being seen as a really potent symbol of peace with dignity.
Representing sustained civil and moral resistance against a Venezuelan state apparatus that stands accused of committing crimes against humanity.
Right. This award is a recognition of just profound personal and political risks taken over a long period.
Absolutely. Machado has faced, over 2 decades of repression, persecution, censorship, yet she consistently chose civil resistance over armed conflict or giving up. By selecting her, the Nobel Committee is making a very clear political statement. They're elevating the concept of nonviolent political struggle against authoritarianism, and they're giving significant international legitimacy to the internal opposition movement within Venezuela.
And the consequence of that choice by the Nobel Committee was immediate and, frankly, dramatic. Venezuela instantly closed its embassy in Norway right after the announcement.
That's right, a really drastic diplomatic move. It just confirms the immense political weight and symbolic offense the award carries for the Venezuelan government, essentially treating the Nobel Prize itself as a hostile foreign political act directed against them.
Okay, shifting focus now across the globe to the Middle East, we have this highly consequential news regarding Gaza and the U.S. diplomatic role. Former President Trump declared the official end of the war in Gaza.
Yes, signing a pact alongside his counterparts from Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey.
And the optics surrounding this declaration, especially at the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, were undoubtedly high power. We heard U.S. F-16 fighters were confirmed to have escorted Air Force One into Egyptian airspace for the event.
Right, maximum visibility. And the declaration itself, peace, it's a massive, potentially world-changing headline. It promises on the surface a resolution to one of the planet's most enduring and tragic conflicts.
However, There's always a however, isn't there? The immediate practical and financial cost seems to starkly undercut that declaration of peace.
It really does. The UN estimates that the reconstruction of Gaza, just rebuilding what's been destroyed, will cost a staggering $70 billion.
$70 billion.
Let's put that figure into perspective for a moment. $70 billion is larger than the entire gross domestic product of many nations, including some in that very region. This monumental figure isn't just about repairs, it's the measure of near total annihilation. It implies the destruction of housing on a massive scale. Hospitals, roads, power grids, water systems, everything.
It just raises that crucial analytical question, doesn't it? How can you really have a declaration of peace when the financial reality requires an expenditure that massive? I mean, where does that $70 billion even come from? The level of international coordination and sustained commitment required to raise and deploy that kind of money is just staggering to contemplate.
Exactly. And beyond the financial cost, the human cost remains deeply unresolved, immediately challenging the proclaimed truce. We're seeing reports that families of hostages are demanding the immediate suspension of this truce if Hamas does not return the bodies of their deceased loved ones.
Then the numbers there are concerning as well.
They are. The reports indicate a huge gap between what was perhaps expected or promised and the reality. Hamas was reportedly only able to deliver 4 bodies out of the 28 they were believed to hold.
Only 4 out of 28.
Yes. And this failure to account for and return the remains of the dead creates immediate, intense, and deeply emotional pressure on any proclaimed peace agreement. It's hard to see how a truce holds under that kind of pressure.
Furthermore, we saw immense internal political tension within Israel itself during this very high-stakes period, during former President Trump's speech in the Knesset.
Right. Israeli deputies were actually expelled from the parliament.
Why? What happened?
They were interrupting his address, reportedly to denounce the ongoing situation and call out what they termed the genocide against Palestinians.
6 expelled from the Knesset during a major address.
This is really crucial insight into the internal Israeli political fault lines. These expulsions demonstrate the raw, powerful dissent simmering right within the heart of Israeli politics regarding the approach to the Gaza conflict and its aftermath. It wasn't just a mild protest. The formal expulsion of elected officials mid-speech signals a deep fracture. A fracture between those supporting the current governmental strategy and those who feel that both the international community and perhaps their own government are failing to adequately address the humanitarian catastrophe.
And the international media reaction to that kind of public breakdown of decorum in the Knesset must have amplified the sense of instability.
Absolutely. It further amplifies the sense that the conflict's resolution, despite the declarations, remains deeply volatile, both externally with groups like Hamas and the hostage families, and internally within Israeli politics itself.
Okay, finally, before we move on, we should briefly cover the regional and transnational security issues that are always sort of bubbling under the surface, even during these major geopolitical moments.
That's right. The day-to-day security challenges don't stop. The prison crisis in Guatemala, for instance, really came to a head following a major security breach.
What happened there?
The escape of 20 members of the notorious Barrio 18 gang from a Guatemalan prison.
20 inmates. That's significant.
Highly significant. And the institutional response was swift and definitive. The prison directors were immediately dismissed. It demonstrates just how severely the Guatemalan government views such large-scale security failures.
And simultaneously, the cross-border crackdown on gangs remains active.
Yes, absolutely. We saw the significant capture of Ricardo Antonio Mendoza Agreda, known as Chino. He's described as a homeboy of the 18 Sureños gang faction, and he was apprehended down in Chiapas, Mexico.
So cooperation across borders is still key.
It underscores the absolute necessity of continued regional coordination to combat the transnational nature of these organized crime groups. It's proof, yet again, that these security challenges simply do not respect national borders.
Okay, so if we try to connect all of this now to the bigger picture, the economic news we're seeing suggests maybe some cautious global optimism being driven by technology, but that's mixed with very specific local infrastructure challenges and some pretty stark fiscal warnings here at home.
Right. Let's start with that global macroeconomic view. The International Monetary Fund, the FMI, has actually improved its forecast for global growth in 2025.
That's correct. They've raised the expected global growth rate slightly up to 3.2%.
And what are they attributing that boost to? Primarily, they say, it's due to the acceleration of technological investment happening worldwide. So innovation and tech adoption are seen as key drivers.
That's a significant shift in outlook, suggesting tech might pull the global economy forward. And locally, are we seeing reflections of that tech adoption?
We are, particularly in finance. We saw a reported 6.9% increase in the use of digital wallets for remittances in just a single month.
Almost 7% in 1 month. That's rapid.
It's very rapid adoption. It confirms a fundamental shift away from those traditional, often costly ways of sending money, moving towards more inclusive, mobile digital mechanisms like Chivo or other wallets.
And in terms of basic connectivity?
Well, on that front, Claro has been named the operator with the fastest mobile network here in El Salvador for the 5th consecutive year. So that indicates at least a stable and competitive environment for basic digital infrastructure access.
Good to know. Now, infrastructure investment itself remains a huge national priority, obviously designed to spur future economic growth. The first stretch of the highly anticipated Tren del Pacífico. We have a cost estimate for that now.
We do. According to Investia, the agency overseeing it, that first stretch is estimated to cost a hefty $300 million.
$300 million just for the first stretch. That's a colossal undertaking.
It is. It's designed to potentially revolutionize logistics and maybe even reshape the economic geography within the country. It's arguably a necessary long-term investment, but one that obviously requires extremely careful fiscal planning and flawless execution, given the price tag.
And that brings us directly to that cautious note, that warning sounded by economist Carlos Acevedo. What exactly was his concern regarding the pension study?
Acevedo stated pretty clearly that the delay in completing and releasing the national pension study signals, in his view, a negative path for the country's long-term fiscal health.
Can you unpack that a bit? Why is delaying a study seen as negative?
Well, a pension study is crucial. It assesses the solvency of the entire retirement system. It analyzes things like contribution rates, retirement age projections, and the long-term viability of the fund based on demographics. Delaying it usually implies that the findings are politically sensitive, meaning it likely indicates an urgent need for reforms. Reforms like raising the retirement age or increasing contribution rates, both of which are often deeply unpopular to ensure the system doesn't collapse under future demographic pressure. So the delay itself is often interpreted as an evasion of necessary, though difficult, fiscal decisions.
Okay, understood. Despite those longer-term fiscal warnings, though, there is some stability in one area that's vital to consumer confidence day to day: fuel prices.
That's right. The government announced that fuel prices for gasoline and diesel will remain unchanged for the next period, specifically from October 14th to October 27th.
So about 2 weeks of predictable prices.
Correct. Which provides at least a short-term window of predictable operational costs for businesses and some stability for consumers at the pump, insulating the local economy just slightly from the volatile global oil market fluctuations.
Okay. Finally, let's touch on a couple of notes involving local sports excitement and culture. The nation's eyes, I imagine, are firmly fixed on La Selecta tonight.
Absolutely. They face Guatemala with immense pressure. They basically need to win this match to keep their World Cup qualification dreams alive. It's a huge game.
In any team news,
The coach, Leo Gomez, has confirmed that Nathan Ordaz will start this crucial match. So yeah, it's a high-stakes, must-win scenario that kind of cuts through all the political noise and hopefully unites the country for 90 minutes.
definitely something a lot of people will be focused on. And shifting to the cultural arena.
Well, following that historic Guns N' Roses concert at the Magico Gonzalez Stadium, which was itself a significant event for showcasing local entertainment infrastructure,
Right, that was a big deal.
we now have news of local talent making strides in Hollywood. Julio Urrutia has apparently started filming his second Hollywood production. It's titled Chupacabra.
His second Hollywood film. That's fantastic news.
It provides a nice burst of positive cultural news, highlighting the growth and increasing international recognition of cinematic talent from El Salvador. Okay, so let's try to synthesize the major threads of this incredibly packed news cycle we've just walked through. Domestically, what really emerges is a picture of a country operating under, frankly, extreme duress right now.
Yeah, definitely.
You have the entire nation gripped by this nationwide weather emergency, the Alerta Naranja, which has already resulted in tragic fatalities like Nancy Tatiana and Kennedy Roque, and is causing widespread infrastructural challenges. And simultaneously, you have these ongoing security efforts, marked by those very public disorder arrests like the Chicas Diaz brothers, but also shadowed by the ongoing, deeply concerning issues around accountability for detainees and deportees, symbolized really by that desperate search for Irvin by his family, and the truly distressing death of Professor Manuel Miras so soon after his release.
And then internationally, the focus is squarely on these dramatic moments of of political symbolism and these grand attempts at geopolitical closure.
Exactly. The Nobel Prize instantly created diplomatic tension by awarding María Corina Machado, an act the Venezuelan government protested by literally closing its embassy in Norway. And that contrasts so sharply with the, shall we say, controversial nomination of Donald Trump by Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Right, and at the same time, you have Trump declaring this expensive, incredibly delicate end of the war in Gaza, signed alongside Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey.
While crucially, the underlying tensions remain incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Everything from the unreturned bodies of hostages causing anguish for families to that raw internal political dissent we saw erupting with the expulsion of deputies from the Israeli Knesset. It's a very fragile situation despite the declarations.
So wrapping this all up, it really raises an important question, I think, for you, the listener, to consider as you process this flood of information from the last 24 hours.
What's the core question we should be asking?
It's this. In an era where news is constant, it's often polarized, and it frequently centers on these high-level declarations like the Gaza Peace Pact signed by world leaders, how do those political proclamations genuinely align with the very real, very immediate human suffering on the ground? And how do they square with the massive, practical, infrastructural challenges that are detailed in something like that staggering $70 billion reconstruction estimate for Gaza?
Yeah, that immense gap between the declaration of peace and the actual practical cost of rebuilding. It really demands that we critically examine the true efficacy, the real stability of any swift political resolution announced from on high. It forces us to ask what peace truly means when the foundations are so utterly destroyed. Your contributions help us. The Bitcoin QR code to scan can be found only on cover of this content or via PayPal. The username can be found in the description of this content. Your contributions, however minimal, help us stay connected on Virtual Cloud. Follow us, share, and comment. Thank you for listening. We are News as Salvador SV. Share this content and recommend it to your friends. We make it very special for you. Greetings to everyone. Blessings on your day.